Ross and Rachel, where are you now?
They're in the suburbs with a baby, I think.
Oh, they should do a reunion.
Oh, that's a new idea. Yeah, nobody's ever thought of a Friends reunion before.
Hi, I'm Laura Heck. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified Gottman therapist, and co-host of Marriage Therapy Radio.
Hi, I'm Zach Brittle. I'm a certified Gottman therapist in private practice in Seattle, Washington. I'm also the co-host of Marriage Therapy Radio with Laura Heck.
Zach and I are back with Vanity Fair to take a look at the relationship between Ross and Rachel on Friends. Ross has harbored a secret crush on Rachel since the 9th grade. They went to the same high school and their families were friends. As teens, Ross was sort of a nerd and Rachel was quite popular.
As an adult, Ross gets divorced from his wife because she turns out to fall in love with another woman. Rachel leaves her fiancé at the altar and they all connect together in this coffee shop and begin this journey that we watched for 10 years called Friends.
What are you doing here?
Well, you said you couldn't go out, so...
You brought a picnic. Ugh, what a boyfriend. That's it. On Monday, I start wearing makeup. Ross, honey, this is very nice, but I've got a crisis.
Yeah, but I've got couscous.
If we're just talking like pure relationship dynamic, it's pretty bad when you can't pick up on your partner's explicit cues. Like,
right.
And she's doing her best. She's trying, but she's not got much to work with here.
Pepper?
I think he's also so focused on what he wants, and that can be so frustrating in a relationship when you are so focused on what your desires are and what you want rather than paying attention to what your partner is literally saying to you.
I think that's actually a really good point, particularly when you think again about the trajectory that the two of them were on, where he's been trying to woo her for decades and she's kind of late to the party. So he's actually living into his like dream. And he's not going to blow it, so I'll give him at least that.
Ross, you're not listening to me. I don't have time to stop.
Come on, Rach, you don't have, 10 minutes?
I don't have 10 minutes.
What, Sophie, does she have 10 minutes?
Hey, Ross, I told you I don't.
I have to say, when he turns to, the first time I watched this, when he turns to secretary, I think they called them secretaries back then, and says, hey, does she have 10 minutes? That would send me over the edge. I mean, clearly she's already escalated. She's already a state of feeling like she's internally chaotic. And now he's saying, hey, I don't believe what you're saying about yourself. And he turns to her assistant, and that I would yell.
Don't yell at me, okay? This is the most I've seen you all week.
Look, I cannot do this right now, okay? I've got a deadline.
I think there's a very important alignment issue here, that when you're not aligned, you're not going to have effective communication, period. To me, like, when you want to know what people's priorities are, you follow their time and their money. And so what she's basically saying is, you're not a priority for me because I don't have 10 minutes for you. And that would be frustrating as well.
I disagree. I think that if someone says, I'm going to be in the middle of a shitstorm right now at work and I need to get this done, and then you walk in and you say, what you just said, you know what? I'm more important. My desires, what I haven't planned for you is more important than this right now. Setting up a boundary and saying, I'm in the middle of something and I know that I'm not going to be able to attune to you or to be present for you. So when I get home, that's when we can celebrate the anniversary. That's when we can talk.
Would you just go home? I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, but why?
Goodbye.
100%, yeah. No, I think 100% you're right. I don't think this is an appropriate way to request her time. But you got to remember this other piece too that he threw in there. He said, "This is the most I've seen you all week." So she's made a more comprehensive decision about where she's putting her time than just these 10 minutes. So I think if couples are going to thrive, they need to make sure that they create space for one another. Certainly within the context of a week. Maybe not within the context of, hey, I just barged in on your workplace.
Look, about what happened earlier.
Oh, well, I completely understand. You were stressed.
I was going to give you a chance to apologize to me.
For what? For letting you throw me out of your office?
You had no right coming down to my office, Ross. You do not bring a picnic basket to somebody's work
Unless maybe they were a park ranger.
Yeah, well, excuse me for wanting to be with my girlfriend on our anniversary. Boy, what an ass am I.
That's defensiveness. FYI, in case you're watching this. Oh, pity me. I did something and I'm not to be at fault. So he's being defensive at the moment.
Well, and I think the other piece too is this idea that you talk about a lot, which is kind of, for some reason, she's got on her dark lenses, right? You call them shit-covered glasses.
But I told you I didn't have the time.
Yeah, well, you never have the time.
Shit-colored glasses, it's really just this negative perspective. So in the research, you can either be in positive sentiment override, where you really look at your relationship, you scan for the positives, you're constantly on the lookout for what you love and appreciate about your partner and about your relationship, or you can be in negative sentiment override. And the negative sentiment override is where you find yourself really easily interpreting neutral stimuli in your relationship as more negative, or you find that you're really just on the lookout for ways that your partner is hurting you or betraying you or missing the mark. And I think in this instance, just this one gesture of Ross showing up with this picnic basket and offering a kind, I think all of us could look at that and go, oh, that's so sweet. I mean, we even see that with the assistant, right?
That's it. On Monday, I start wearing makeup.
Her lenses are more accurate than Rachel's at this point because she goes, that's so sweet. And the way that Rachel looks at it is through negative sentiment override, which takes time to creep in for you to get to the place where your relationship is overdrawn and you're misinterpreting actions in the relationship.
They aren't in a healthy foundational space because if they were, and he shows up with the basket, which is effectively it's an interpretable act, right? Am I going to interpret it as an intrusion or as a relief?
Right.
And I'm more likely to interpret it as a relief when the foundation is intact.
For a week, they haven't connected. And if you are feeling like there's been disconnection, you think of this emotional bank account between the two of you. And all week long, you've just been making all of these withdrawals because you're busy, you're stressed out at work, you're not able to be with your partner. And then all of a sudden, Ross shows up with this beautiful gesture. And the lens that she's looking at that through is interpreting that this is him barging in rather than making a sweet gesture and saying, I just want to spend time with you.
Ross, what do you want from me? You want me to quit my job so you can feel like you have a girlfriend?
No, but it would be nice if you'd realize that it's just a job.
Ooh.
Just a job?
Yes.
There's so many things happening here that just make the spiral go down even further, because what we know about Rachel is that she had been working at the coffee shop. And now she's working in a job that is her dream job. And he says it's just a job, which completely minimizes her dream and her importance.
Ross, do you realize this is the first time in my life I'm doing something I actually care about? This is the first time in my life I'm doing something that I'm actually good at?
That to me is her saying, you don't know me. Because if you knew me, if you cared about me, if you were honoring my dreams, then you would recognize that this is a big deal. And when I'm stressed out and I need to get something done or want to accomplish something at work, it's because it's not just about work, it's about the dream.
Oh, maybe we should just take a break.
Okay, fine. You're right. Let's take a break. Let's cool off, okay? Let's get some frozen yogurt or something.
Perfect idea. Take a break. Go get some frozen yogurt separately.
No, this is it.
A break from us.
Do you call that stonewalling? He leaves the room?
Yeah. I mean, stonewalling is basically just shutting down from your partner. When you become a stonewall, you're not engaging, you're not speaking, your nonverbals aren't present. They grab their keys, they leave, they go for a drive. Stonewalling is without agreement. Taking a break, however, can be incredibly helpful. And that would have been, had they followed this and said, you know what, why don't we take a break? And Rachel would have bit her tongue rather than saying, I mean a break from us. My guess is that they would have calmed down, because right now they're in sort of diffuse physiological arousal, DPA, of what we consider fight or flight. They're flooded. And you just can't have a good conversation with your partner when you're flooded. And in order to combat that, taking a break would have been a great idea. Let's calm down and then let's talk about this, because whatever happened up until this point has not been effective, clear, empathetic, generous communication between the two of us.
And kind of what happens next is the result of not effectively ending this argument in a way that would set you up for success or set you up for repair anyway. But I think the moment she says, let's take a break, and he doesn't understand what she means, and then she says, no, this is what I mean, he needs to stay right there and make sure that they have an agreement about what they mean about the break. Because that's really the problem with what happens next, right? They don't have an agreement about what the break means. And so if they're going to end that conversation effectively, they have to find agreement about what the break means. And I think you're exactly right. If they had taken a break and gone to get some yogurt, they may have stayed, much more connected, because it's the arousal that was the problem, not the argument itself.
I find that a lot of couples, they end up everything escalates, and then they say, we need to separate. We need to take a break. And the whole reason why they want to take a break is because the pain is too great. They've gotten to that threshold where it's like, it's going to be easier for us to cease action and take a break than it is for us to continue forward. But that doesn't mean that your job is done. At that point, now you have a whole lot of things that you need to script out, write out, come up to some agreement. What does a break mean? Does it mean that we text each other? Does it mean that we call one another? Does it mean that we don't see each other? Does it mean that we don't show up at parties where we know the other person's going to be? Do we date other people? There's a lot of things that you need to establish. Otherwise, there's so many opportunities where you're going to get it wrong and then be hurt. You're not setting yourself up for success.
Just get away from me!
It was a mistake. I made a mistake, okay?
A mistake? What were you trying to put it in? Her purse? You know what? I want you to leave. Get out of here. Just get out now.
No, I want to stay. I want to talk about this.
There's no chance this conversation goes well while they're escalated. I mean, there's absolutely zero chance. So the idea that he should leave maybe is actually true, but I think the thing about stonewalling in particular is the leaving has the promise of a return, right? And so we have to assume that if they're going to find a way to de-escalate, it's got to be together.
You know what? I'm not the one that wanted that break, okay? You're the one that bailed on us. You're the one that ran the moment things got just a little rough. That's what?
The thing about infidelity is that I think there's lots of different profiles. They're talking about two different things almost, because Ross is concerned about this present figure in the relationship that has been a threat to him for a time, despite Rachel's protestations that she hasn't been with him at all. That's kind of different than the one night stand you have with the girl that you met at the store. In terms of the profiles are different. They're just very different types of infidelity.
That is neither here nor there.
Okay, well, here we are. Now we're in a tough spot again, Rach. What do you want to do? How do you want to handle it?
First of all, he stands up. Now he's standing taller than her, and he's pointing his finger at her. I'm like, Rachel, you stand up, girl. Or just tell him to sit down. But that's a really awkward, that's not going to go anywhere. Just the body language alone is not healthy in this communication.
I did a terrible, stupid thing, okay? And I'm sorry. I wish I could take it back, but I can't.
No, Ross, don't!
It was a pretty good apology until the kissing.
And it's really interesting how he can switch. I mean, it's funny because it's actually a pretty accurate portrayal of how people in the moment, like they're trying anything they possibly can to feel heard. And so he stands up, he points his finger, he gets frustrated, he gets intense. And then he's like, this isn't working. So he sits down, he gets calm, he softens, he starts talking about how much he loves her. And it's like, you are willing to just pull out anything you can to get to your partner. And interestingly, I mean, the listener is really the one who's going to determine whether or not they're able to hear what you have to say.
When you said the listener is the one who gets to decide, I almost thought about me, the viewer. Like, I get to decide too, right? Like, I get to decide whether or not I'm going to forgive Ross. Like, do you have that notion? Do you want to forgive him?
Yeah, I do. I had a lot of empathy at that moment, because all of this started off with him trying to reach across the gap, the chasm, and bring an anniversary, celebrate their love together. And all within a matter of 24 hours, he's the one who's saying, I haven't seen you, I care about you, I want to celebrate our love, to then going out and feeling like he's in pain and trying to make himself feel better. But yeah, I do want to forgive him, and I do have empathy for him.
I used to think of you as somebody that would never, ever hurt me. Ever. God, and now I just can't stop picturing you with her. I can't. It doesn't matter what you say or what you do, Ross. It's just changed everything.
When there's been a betrayal like this, Rachel is exactly right. Like, you aren't the same person, or you certainly aren't in the same relationship. So what's interesting too, though, is like, often I'll say to clients who have had an affair of some sort, I'll ask them, I said, if I asked you 2 years ago if you would ever have an affair, what would you say? And they'll say, no. Of course I would say, no, I would never do that. And so in that way, Ross, in this case, is also not the same person that he was. Like, he, to himself, right? He used to be a guy who would never have an affair, and now he's not that guy. And so he has to come to terms with that reality, that he's a new person, and he has to get to know that person. And if their relationship is going to recover, it's going to be because they agree to, again, pivot. Pivot! When something is broken, it needs to be repaired. And the thing that's really cool about really good affair work or really good betrayal work is that often the thing that lives on the other side of the break can be stronger than the thing that existed before it. And so, but that's really what's happening right now, is that they don't have a clear path to the post-betrayal agreement. Could he have done differently? I mean, I think he could have probably left like 6 hours ago and given her some space that she needed, because this conversation going on until 3 o'clock in the morning isn't, you know, it doesn't have a safe landing strip.
This can't be it.
Then how come it is?
I wish there was a hard and fast rule that basically said if you haven't solved it in 2 hours, or you haven't come to some sort of resolution, or decided that you're not going to come to a resolution and it was time to take a break. And by break, I mean actually like
a pause.
Take a break from each other, and hit a pause, and then come back. I wish there was a hard and fast rule, because I don't know if there's a whole lot that can be accomplished. But there does need to be, this conversation seems like it needs to happen. There needs to be this is how this makes me feel. Why did this happen? They need to have this sort of conversation.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know if anything good comes from it after you're exhausted and hungry and tired and lonely and already in that state of just being really flooded.
Ross, you didn't tell me you were a doctor. Whoa, wait a minute. You haven't even told her that you are a doctor yet? How long have you known her? Like an hour?
So since the last scene of them breaking up, many years have passed. They're not together, but surprise, surprise, they have a baby together, and they're living together, and they're also seeing other people.
There's an amazing connection between us.
You feel that too? Oh, I thought that was just me.
Are you kidding?
So Ross is playing a game, right? This is pretty classic Ross. Like, I'm gonna indirectly get the thing that I want, which is always Rachel's attention, right? He always wants Rachel's attention.
Okay, Ross, what's going on here? Are we just bringing strange women back to the apartment now?
I don't know. Are we just kissing guys on balconies?
What? How do you know about that?
Through the magic of sight.
Does she owe him the conversation to say, I'm seeing other people?
I guess it kind of depends on what their agreement is, right?
You've been out there in bars and on balconies for over a month now, and you don't even have the courtesy to tell me.
It's one thing to say, I'm very uncomfortable with you having men over here and sleeping with them while our baby is in the next room. Like, that's okay.
Totally.
Like, maybe that's a legit boundary for this style of relationship, but I don't want you to like meet people at a bar. I don't understand the basis of that right now.
Who do you think you are? Who are you to decide what messages I should or should not get?
Who am I?
Yes.
I'm the guy who's taking care of our baby while you're out at bars meeting guys.
Oh my God, I cannot believe you. You know, I actually came in here hoping to have a mature conversation with you about us.
So you try something, you say, hey, we have a kid, let's live together, let's do this. And I think that the agreement should always be, let's reevaluate the situation. If you've come up with some sort of an agreement, then say, well, let's reevaluate this in like 3 months and see what's working, what's not working. Because the way that they're doing this, like, they are having the uncrumble conversation of this doesn't work anymore, and it's okay to change midstream.
You know what? This doesn't work. In fact, this is the opposite of working.
clearly.
Maybe this, just doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, maybe not.
Friends ran for 10 seasons, and you got to figure that Ross was with Rachel or into Rachel for, 20 years before it started, or maybe 10, 15 or so. So their story is pretty long. Their story is about 25 years long. And anthropologically, relationships only have about a 3-year life cycle. And so if they were in, let's call it 18 years of relationship, that's 6 different versions of their relationship. And I think what we just watched was something that, we actually did see the end of one of them, perhaps. And I think couples do this sometimes where they go, I can't do this anymore. And I think what they really mean is I can't do this like this. And so there needs to be a renegotiation of terms.
There's this constant evolution, almost like this shedding of a skin. And if couples are willing to stay flexible and say, okay, we're changing, we're growing, we're evolving, there's going to be a shedding of the skin, and then they can evolve into their next 3 years. They weren't married when they had their child. But that's actually relatively new for the 90s. I would say it's much more of the option now for couples that have had babies together to look at these untraditional or non-traditional ways of living together and having family together that includes loved ones, includes the baby mama or baby daddy, but not necessarily in a romantic role. But what we're seeing is the reason why this doesn't work is because they both have feelings for each other. That part is obvious in how they're talking about these other people. Rachel actually does get jealous about this other woman because she does have feelings for Ross. But just because you have feelings for someone doesn't necessarily mean you want to be in a relationship with them or that you should be in a relationship with them. And I think that that's the constant tension that they're pulling on is I have feelings for you. You are family to me, but I don't know if we should be in a relationship, if we are good in a relationship.
Thank you for coming with me today.
Oh, of course.
Rachel Green is very happy you're in her room.
Me too.
No.
Come here.
I just don't want to be alone tonight.
Okay, well, I can maybe grab a sleeping bag or...
Well, it's interesting to see the dynamic shift, right? For a couple of episodes, we've seen him be the primary sort of pursuer. And now she's gone into the pursuer space, which is, certainly given the trauma that she's experiencing, that makes sense. But good on Ross for, maintaining a boundary.
You are upset about your father and you're feeling vulnerable, and I just don't feel it would be right. I feel like I'd be, taking advantage of you.
But taking advantage? I am giving you the advantage. Enjoy.
Look, I'm sure it would be great, but I think one of us has to be thinking clearly. So I'm gonna go.
Terry Real talks about how couples quite often will sort of vacillate between being the adult and then being the wounded child. And in this moment, she's quite literally the wounded child while her father is in the hospital. And the thing that I love is he says, you can be wounded, and there's certainly moments where we need to be able to show up and be the wounded child, but only one of you gets to be the wounded child at any given time, which means that he recognized you're hurting, you're in pain, and that's a space that you need to be in this moment. But that doesn't mean that I also get to get swept off and be in the moment like this and make mistakes where it probably isn't going to serve our relationship. That I need to stand my ground as the adult to make adult decisions, which is quite often being able to resist your urges that come up.
In the future, when a girl asks for some ill-advised sympathy sex, just do it.
I can't believe this. I was just being a good guy.
Oh, that is so hot.
You know what? To avoid this little thing in the future, let's just say you and me never having sex again.
What?
That's right. Sex is off the table. I am never having sex with you again.
It's not fair that she said, that she blames him for how she's feeling. Because he did operate as the functional adult in that scenario.
She wanted to feel comforted. And she's reaching out for Ross in a way where she knows that he is someone that she can trust. And so she's reaching for him. And I think that there is a graceful exit, which is exactly what he did. So I think he did everything right, saying, I think that we need to take a moment. I think I need to go away. I will see you in the morning. I mean, he's showing up for her in all of the ways that she needs, except for drawing a boundary and saying no to sex, which I think is a perfectly fine boundary.
And notably, this scene plays really differently if the genders are switched. I think that we just have to acknowledge that it's okay to set a boundary and say no. And we would absolutely say that if it was Ross making his move on Rachel and then trying to shame her for not sleeping with him.
100%.
It's kind of hard, though. You know, when two people have a connection, you know, that's just seems like such a waste.
I was just thinking about how these two have been breaking up for 10 years now. They've never quite figured it out, which is tough because it's like a wound that they keep scratching at and it never really heals. And they just are like, I'm just going to scratch it a little bit more today. And I thought maybe, just maybe, they were getting somewhere with this, being able to say, we're not ever going to have sex again. But nope, Rachel just went in there and she gave it a good scratch.
Ross.
Yes?
Just so you know, with us, it's never off the table.
I don't think it's a choice. I don't think that they made a choice to have it always on the table. I just think it's true. And you know what? I mean, different rules exist for different couples. I mean, that's just the deal. And for these guys, they have a very intimate relationship that includes being able to be there for one another at their most vulnerable. It includes being able to yell at each other. And apparently it includes being able to have sex forever, anytime, whenever it's not off the table. And that works for them.
I'm wanting to disagree whether or not it works for them. I think it works well enough, but do I think that their relationship could be better, stronger, if there were clearer boundaries between Ross and Rachel? Probably. I think that we need to be able to know where the boundary is so that we can take it right up to the boundary and then back off. But anytime the two of them get into a place where all of a sudden they notice one person starting to cross the boundary, I think that's when it gets squirrely. The relationship gets more complicated, more stressful. And like we saw in the hospital room, that was an unnecessary blow up between the two of them because it was an open-ended boundary between the two of them. I would hate to be the other person. So if Ross gets a girlfriend or a fiance or I don't know where, but I would hate to be the other person in this triad because there is always going to be that third party. There can't be a full connection between Ross and another person or Rachel and another person as long as you still continue to have this weird boundary between you and your baby mama or your baby dada. I think most of us do most of our growing from making mistakes, and clearly Rachel and Ross have had many mistakes along the way, and you can't help but just grow from those opportunities of learning what works, what doesn't work. They still have it on the table. It continues to be on the table for the two of them, because maybe along the way they have learned that even though it does hurt, sometimes it's worth it for the two of them to be together.
There's something really, really powerful, frankly, about relationships that are formed in your youth that you continue into your adulthood. And, again, these guys were inevitable. And they were inevitable because they were written characters on a sitcom. But I think there is... I'm glad that we ended here because there's the reminder that they have a secure attachment and that they really do have each other's best interests at heart. Ultimately, Ross and Rachel end up together, and it's because of their friendship. It's because they show up for each other. It's because they are deeply familiar with one another. It's because they're attracted to one another and they let each other know. The long-term success of their relationship is really based on a foundation of really solid. They're friends. There it is. It's right there in the title. Yeah, so that was Ross and Rachel from Friends. They've come a long way over the last 10 years, or the 10 years that they were on TV, and it was fun hanging out with them.
Thanks, Vanity Fair, for having us as we had an opportunity to take a look at just how much relationships evolve over time.
This show has a warm spot in my heart.
Great way to waste the 90s.